What is up, friends, YouTube motorcycle enthusiasts? Time to set up some hot water. Let's get after it. Alright guys, at this point, I hope you guys have really been enjoying the van build series. I know I have. More work to be done. So, as you guys remember, I had my drinking water and my utility water tanks here that I installed, my 12-volt pump, and then ultimately the sprayer. So at this point, I would really like to do some hot water. If you guys remember correctly, I did end up putting the probe into the bottom portion of the water tank. I'll just go ahead and show you since I'm talking about it. This guy right here. So that's a 12 volt 300 watt heating probe. I did some tests with it. I was probably a little bit more optimistic than what its actual usefulness was. So it didn't really work out, and I should have listened to other people, but some things you guys just gotta try for yourself, and it was only 25 bucks. Nonetheless, does it heat the water? Yes, it does. Does it take a whole lot of power and time? Yes, it also does. So that's not going to be a super functional method of getting a hot water shower. It takes a lot of time. It pulls extra power from my Goal Zero. And at this point, I don't have any roof solar or anything super fancy other than just charging from the 120 watt 12 volt input from the van itself. So with all that, I figured I would go ahead and try a Camplux. Now, I have talked about a Julka in the past. Julka is an Australian brand. They are made in China, but their quality control is pretty good and the price reflects. They're over $300 for the base kit. This Camplux, also made in China, a little bit lower quality, but overall good reviews. So the thing I like about this is, number one, it's less than half the price. I got this guy for about 130 bucks. And it also doesn't come with a lot of stuff that I don't need. Really, what you see is what you get whenever it comes to the unit itself, which works great because I already have the 12 volt pump mounted and I'm already prepared to feed a hot water line, or I'm sorry, a cold water line to the unit itself. So the plan is I'm going to mount the unit on the door, and then it will just live there permanently, and then I'll just be able to on demand take hot showers with a propane bottle. More testing to follow. Overall, I think it gets really good reviews and most people like the devices. There is a pretty decent warranty. I think it's a 2-year warranty from Camplux, so that's really great, keeping the box and all that jazz. And overall, the customer service seems to be pretty good for the people that have had some failures. So at this point, if I'm going to mount this thing up, my little magnetic foam insulation board by itself is not going to work. That was just temporary, obviously, one on this door, one on that door, just to help with my heating and cooling solutions over the last season. I haven't had a reason to actually build a door frame yet, so now I do. So this is going to get a panel, and then my other door is also going to get a panel for some storage options, but I'll talk about that in another video. So nonetheless, time to make a panel for this. So what I chose to do was take some 1/8 inch ABS plastic to make the panel itself. I will use the good old-fashioned riv nuts with some bolts to make the skin, and I will also go ahead and reutilize this foam board because I don't want to remove the insulation. I want the insulation to remain, but the panel will just go over it, and the magnetic portion will not be a requirement anymore because the panel will tack it down. As you guys can see, I've already sound deadened these doors, so that's pretty good. And then I'm just going to move forward with it. So let's get this thing mounted and see what we come up with. All right, my friends, I have completely wrapped up the Camplux install. So let's go all the way through this thing. I'll show you guys each component and what I plan to do maybe in the future, or some things I would do different. All right, so first and foremost, we know that the 12 volt pump is feeding water. This hasn't changed from the previous setup, pump off, pump on. What I did end up doing is adding this quick connect. Obviously, this is the cold water feed. So this quick connect is in place just so I can pull it apart if I need to. But overall, it's in a good, I got good pressure on there. Overall, it's in a good spot to be able for the door to shut, and it swings all the way open if I need to. but nonetheless it pretty much stays right here where the door is because my shower curtain goes up. I've just got it opened all the way for display purposes. So these quick connects are awesome. Link in the description, of course. Comes down and feeds the cold side. Now this cold side, this is the only quick connect. I did that last time because I'm an idiot. The pump is still on. It's okay, we'll press. This is the only quick connect that came with the setup, which some people complain about that it didn't come with quick connects for both sides. Just for your guys' essay, this fitting here is a 3/4 inch GH, which is standard garden hose, right? So you can get these easily. I only needed the one because I ended up using this PEX, not PEX, but the previous line that I used for my setup, the drinking water on the hot side. So in any case, this is the quick connect for that side. Now the output hot side, as mentioned, comes out. This is a 1/2 inch. Ironically, what do you know? 3/4 inch GH output as well. This fits the regular Camco pump fittings. Link in the description also. So I have a handful of these sitting around from whenever I did my surge tank and the 12-volt pump install. So that's good there. This comes to just some adapters that I had. Obviously, I'm still using the original handheld that I used before. I really like this over what was supplied. So the Camplux comes with a shower nozzle, which is fine, but it's just an on-off. You cannot modulate the water volume and you can't turn it like I've showed you guys before in the previous video. I wanted to keep this. Also the hose, this hose is small and easy to move around. The hose that the Camplux comes with is a little thicker and it's just not as pliable, not as easy to move, and it just hangs in place there. So super easy. On the propane side, the Camplux comes with a hose essentially that is meant to connect to a 20-pound bottle. You guys probably know the larger connectors that screw onto the 20-pound propane bottles. Obviously I'm not using a large 20-pound propane bottle, so I opted to get this hose that has the integrated regulator for the 1-pound bottle. Now my buddy has this same setup, and he said he recommended this hose as opposed to just getting the fitting for the original because he had leaking problems. Seems to work great, no issues there. You guys will notice that I'm using the same bottle mount, the rubber strap bottle mount that I used over on the other side of the door that holds the bottle for my stove. So link in the description on all this stuff so you guys can see what we're using. So we have, as far as the ignition goes, it's handled by 2 D batteries that go up in the bottom of the unit. And essentially it's that's it. It's a pressure switch. If the switch feels a change in pressure, it will ignite and turn the gas on. Now as far as the adjustment, it's kind of a min max, however you want to do it. And I like the little sticker here they give you. Low pressure, or you know, the lower the pressure and the higher the gas, the more hot water you're going to get essentially, because obviously the water's flowing through the radiator that's heating the water at a slower rate. So that makes sense, right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. It works fantastic. As you guys can tell, if there's a pressure change, boom, it instantly lights up, and I have hot water that fast, and I can just continue to modulate the water if I so choose, and whenever I shut the water off, the flame shuts off as well. So originally I was a little concerned just because the heat portion, you know, the radiator and the open flame is down there. I was a little concerned about it with my plastic fan and this harness coming up to supply 12 volts to my fan. Non-issue. I ran it a fair amount. I did a mock shower, so to speak, and it gets warm, but it's not going to be a problem. I originally considered maybe putting like a heat shield or something here, but it's just not going to be an issue. It doesn't get hot enough, and it's not close enough to melt any plastic or do anything like that. So overall, that is the setup. So the 2 things that I will probably add to or do later is, number 1, I'm probably going to end up removing the unit and taking this battery pack out and converting my constant 12 volts from my fan to also supply the ignition here. That way I don't have to continue to play with batteries. I have toyed with some solutions. The batteries, they say, last a little while, but at the end of the day, I'm going to have to keep putting batteries into this guy. So, you know, whatever. The other thing is being able to drain the system. Now, Camplux does have this little tab right here. You empty this and it drains essentially the heated radiator to allow the water to come out of it for winterizing the system. So I'm going to use that, obviously, but what I'll also do is get another female, since I used my female here, another female of these CPC fittings, which are fantastic. I love these fittings. And then be able to hook it to my air hose and pressurize and bleed the entire water from the entire system. It doesn't get super hard freezing temps here where I'm at, but nonetheless, you know, whenever it gets real cold, you wanna do that. I don't want anything to happen to my pump, and I don't want anything to happen to the Camplux itself. So overall, those are the two things I would change. Overall, I think this is a really great setup. I've played with it a little bit. It seems to work excellent. The reviews are good. Customer service seems to be pretty good. And there is a, don't quote me, I believe a 2-year warranty, 1 year at a minimum. But nonetheless, that is pretty much the wrap up for my hot shower Camplux system. And as you guys know, that pretty much wraps up that portion. As you guys know, I did play with the temperature probe. I'm just not going to be able to use it, guys. It just, compared to this setup, you know, it was a $30 experiment, if you will, and it just pulls too many amps and just takes too long. So now that I have the on-demand, that's going to be really good. One other thing that I did forget to mention that I may consider doing is putting one of these quick connectors right here as well. So there may be a handful of times when I don't necessarily want the Camplux to be using either power and or the propane. Say I'm washing off dishes or just hosing off something or something along those lines, and I don't want to use it. I could essentially take my nozzle and plug it directly into the quick connector of the pump, bypassing the Camplux. I don't know if I'll do that. We'll see. We'll see how fast I go through the propane. But nonetheless, these are things that I'll have to do as I test. One other thing I'm really glad that I did, and I'll wrap everything up, is I added the foam backing to this panel. Originally, I mocked everything up. I didn't have the hardware. I had to go back to the hardware store to get longer bolts because I have 1/2-inch foam that's behind here. I'm so glad I took everything apart, took the time, put everything back together, because this is, number one, it's insulated, and number two, it's solid. It's not a hollow shell that's, you know, sound reverbing. So it gives some sound deadening, and obviously it's going to give me some insulation. So that pretty much wraps it up for the Camplux. I'm stoked to use the system. I'm really excited that I have on-demand, no kidding, hot water. You can just see the steam rolling off the water in these, you know, it's like 45, 50 degrees outside. So I'm super excited about that. All right, guys. That wraps it up. Time to get out there, get on 2 wheels, ride a dirt bike. This is Accelerate once again. Signing off.